With the arrival of Guido Torreni at the helm of independent watch brand Parmigiani Fleurier, the classic Tonda was refreshed, and the result was the highly successful Tonda PF line, now already comprising several models. The Tonda PF is the embodiment of the Parmigiani's vision of offering subtle, understated luxury and refined craftsmanship. It is also the platform to showcase the brand's watchmaking expertise and their capacity to innovate. Last year's Tonda PF GMT Rattrapante was an original and very interesting take on the GMT function. This year, the Tonda PF Minute Rattrapante is another first. It drives two superimposed minute hands to measure elapsed minutes on demand. We're meeting with Guido Torreni, who will tell us more about this novel timer. Guido, thanks so much for taking the time to explain us the beautiful new Tonda PF Minute Rattrapante. But before we dig into that watch, can you tell us a bit more about how you redesigned the classic Tonda into the Tonda PF and what captures that typical Parmigiani style?
Well, the Tonda PF was unveiled in 2021, at the end of 2021 in September. So it's very recent, and it was a response to a deep question, which is our values, which are our values and which is the customer that we want to serve. And being Parmigiani a very prestigious brand that was made prestigious by the clients who initially bought it in the end of the 90s, I asked myself and our team what would be that customer today, 30 years later, and what would he be wearing, and view that high horological content, discretion and elegance of the style were the founding values of the brand and are the backbone of the brand. We needed to interpret those values into today's world, which is less formal, which is more, if you want, versatile in the way that you wear a watch. So we designed it starting from the classic Tonda, but from its evolution already, that was the Tonda GT, which was the predecessor. And we tried to inject that understated mood now that the brand has, because our clients are not ostentatious. They are people who enjoy luxury, who enjoy a private version of luxury, with a lot of refinement, a lot of elegance. So the codes of the PF are following that, and it's a very clean design, extremely high in the level of craft, because if you look at the guilloche on the dial, if you look at the details of the cases, if you look comfort of the bracelets, the design colors that we choose that are subtle but long-lasting, not flashy colors. So everything is this mood of balance between an elegance, which is understated and quite private.
And that's recognizable in the new PF Minute Rattrapante. Last year it was a GMT Rattrapante. This year you're focusing on the Minute Rattrapante. Can you explain us the technicalities of the watch, but also how to use it?
At Parmigiani we believe that not everything has already been done in watchmaking. You can continue to invent, you can continue to be creative, both on the technical side and also on the aesthetic side. So being the mood of the collection very subtle and discreet, as I said, we wanted to design functions that were interesting but also subtle, as the brand is. So they are there but they're not there. So the GMT Rattrapante was last year world premiere, and it was a function very coveted and very used, like a GMT, that doesn't exist if you're not traveling. So you have a two-hander when you're not traveling, and then it comes to life when you travel and you need the function. So this idea that had to be extremely easy to use through the Rattrapante push button in the crown was the first of a philosophy of complications that we have in mind. The second is the one that we presented this year, which is called the Minute Rattrapante. So it's a two-hander. When you're not using the function, you have your micro rotor basically. And it has two push buttons here at 10 and at 8 o'clock. And it has still the monopoussoir in gold for the Rattrapante function. The Rattrapante function is not anymore applied to the GMT hand, which, by the way, was the first time in the whole history of watchmaking that somebody uses the Rattrapante function outside the chronograph. So it's an innovation per se. The second time we applied it to the minute. To do what? Because what is the function? The function is allowing you to master a certain moment in which you have to do something. It can be our interview, We have 8 minutes for the video, as you told me. We'll try to stick to that. So if you have 8 minutes, you push ahead once, the pusher at 8 o'clock, which is a speed forward of 5 minutes, because it has to be easy to use. If I didn't have this speed forward, I would be pushing 8 times one button, and it's annoying. And then you push 3 times, and you have the top button for the minute, and you have 8 minutes. And that is the time that you have at your disposal to do something. It can be the time that you have to leave the lounge because you have to catch a plane and go to the gate, and you have to master that moment. So when you have at a glance a sort of section of your dial, which is visualizing the time that we have together. And then you move forward, the time elapses, you reach the moment in which you should stop talking or doing the interview, but we're still in a nice conversation, so you start mastering your delay, and the time elapses, so you know that you're 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes late, and then you decide you're done, and you just hide the minute with the Rattrapante function. And this can be used in any, for anything, for everything. I mean,
sort of a countdown timer as well.
It's a visualizer of the time you have at your disposal. Yeah. It started from reinterpreting a diver's watch bezel, because that's a function that you can do through a case, through a diving watch bezel. But then it became something else. It's not a diver watch anymore. It's something that is much more interesting, because you are doing the function, as we are watchmakers, with the movement. And that is, now, how can I address that function, not through a bezel, but through inventing a complication that does that. And it visualizes it very easily on the dial.
Well, it's again discreet and elegant, as you said before. It's clearly a typical Tonda PF in terms of designing and styling, but what are the typical characters that make this watch?
Well, everything is linked to which is the emotion that you have to have while you wear the watch. It's like for the GMT. The GMT had a philosophy: it's so clean, it's so pure. We took out everything that is not necessary to have a very pure experience while you're not traveling and while you're traveling. So out the 24-hour scale, out the night and day indication, out the date, because if it changes, it's not at midnight because you're somewhere else, is annoying. So everything is done for the purity of the idea. In the Minute Rattrapante, it's the same thing. You have only the function that you need. So it's like a dashboard of a sports car, but because the more you put information, the less you're concentrated when you're driving. You have to be clean in what you read. No? So this is the purity of the function itself. And as Michel always says, technique is beautiful. And in that sentence, you can understand what you mean, because the way that you design, the way that you tell the time, even if you don't know in which case you're going to put the movement in, it's already a design statement. You have already done a choice. No? Because if you use a petite seconde, you're saying something more classic than a central-hour hand, second hand at the center, or not having anything at all, which is the choice that we did on the micro rotor, because it's not classic, it's not sporty. So out the second hand. It's a question of designing through the movement, and the movement helps you to give you that mood. So in the Minute Rattrapante, we wanted to focus only on the minute function, on this elapse in time, so we took out everything else. There's no date, there's no second hand, there's nothing, there's just the function to allow you to have a perfect two-hander or to have the function when you need it.
Thanks for taking the time to explain this to us. It's a very practical and useful function, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Frank. It's a pleasure having you.